And every shell in here he collected. Most of them were collected, the big ones, all of them were collected live. You can't find these anymore because there are too many people and the shells can't keep up with it. The animals that make the shells can't keep up with the people who collect them. And then, of course, his lignum vitae legacy. He loved plants. And Rockefeller asked him, when he was working at Conneaut Bay, he said, we have a few seeds from the last few trees left on St. John of the lignum vitae. He'd never heard of it. He said it's a famous hardwood. It's almost extinct. You think you could make them grow? Because he had already a reputation for making all kinds of stuff grow. Lots of papayas. So many the hotel didn't know what to do with them. They said stop growing them. So try the lignum vitae. Get him on another kick, another tack. And he succeeded. The seeds succeeded in growing and blooming. And lignum vitae is the densest wood in the world. It was the wood used in the gavel that Sirica used in that famous trial. It's a self-lubricating wood. So the Brits had hacked it down off the side of St. John closest to Tortola, the British island, and they didn't bother to replant. And so they used them for ball bearings because it was self-lubricating wood. And they used them for lintels over houses, and they used them for bound posts. Now in St. John, the story of the way people move bound posts as property gets more and more expensive, that's another story. But lignum vitae has been invaluable, but it is beautiful. When it blooms, it has the most unlikely lavender violet blossom. That's a great honey plant too. And so he planted them, and they grew, you know, like wunderkind of some kind, wonder plants. And they've blossomed all over St. John. And his colleagues, oh, Mr. Jordan, you'll never live to see these trees bloom. But they did, and they've kept on blooming. And we still have them in the yard. We have over 20 maybe. Down by the director's house is the slowest growing one that has suddenly burst into bloom after only 40 years. I mean, they take a little while, but not 100 years. And here is a sculpture in lignum vitae that is done by an internationally recognized artist, sculptor, from St. John, and it is of a rasta, and the way in which he was able to sculpt this exceedingly hard wood to the smooth and definitive shapes that he achieved there, that really gets you. And it got me. I saw it on exhibit, and I was able to get it for Ivan for his Father's Day present. He loved it. So it's there. So lignum vitae legacy, it was in a book I wrote long before he died, Guide to the Natural History of St. John, because of the work he had done with that plant, just making it grow. In other words, all of nature, as in that famous aria from the Snow Maiden, which is on the CD, is one of them. Nature is wonder, growth, beauty, and it's all an expression of the love of God, which we may or may not take notice of, but it's there, and it was there for him. The newest of many, and these are archives of past and present history on St. John that astonish all of us. Again, one person with an incredibly sharp eye, something like 25/20 vision, found this particular artifact. I put it in the Timex watch display that I got. I don't know if you can see it. It is was found on the beach at Dennis Bay, which is a former plantation and is a part of the national park, but not exactly, for reasons which these archives explore. But the history of this little piece of glass. We had a friend of the museum who came, looked at it. He's an expert in that. He took out his eyepiece. He said, Doris, I hazard the guess that this is 17th century French wine, probably Burgundy. And there were good reasons for him to make that speculative, likely guess. So, okay, we go back. So what about Dennis Bay? Just take one bay. All of St. John has bays. We found out that all kind of stuff has been going on there. And was able to do a couple of stories in one of our local journals, the St. John Times. And the more we got into it, the more we found out there was good, bad, funny, which is what archives should be. But this was our latest scoop, and this picture might be the first time it's been seen by any but a few closely shielded, guarded eyes. These were pictures taken of this famous plantation estate house, which was purportedly, for example, destroyed, according to the records given to the National Park, by Hurricane Marilyn in 1995. But this woman, very much alive, was able to show these photographs of the estate house, showing that, in fact, the whole beautiful Dennis Bay estate house was pretty much intact. So that the story put out, for reasons we don't have to go into, we don't want to get into any kind of calumny, this kind of data comes up, out of the bushes and out of the memories of St. Johnians, and some of them with cameras. So what I'm trying to say is that people who come here, we're not just looking at the statistics, which are very important, but there are other statisticians. We are dealing with the more vibrant, speculative, but such curious, interesting ways in which what you wish had been true maybe really was, and that's good, because sometimes it's the other way around. So much for Dennis Bay. That's just a current archive that we have developing all the time. The point being, archives are like a movable feast in this museum. We can move around. I've got baskets. Oh my God, here are the baskets. I tried to get them out of sight because I felt they were not camera ready. Ugh. This is an Easter basket brought by a friend many years ago, and it has become the archives for all of the fascinating data on the rediscovery of Ivan Jadan, both by Russian scholars and by Americans. Here's the data on the fact that the books about Ivan in the museum are now in the library, started underground by Solzhenitsyn during World War II. And that has now come above ground. We have the first Soviet Holocaust museum in Perm in Russia. And the story of Ivan Jadan is a part of that, because he just escaped that enormous Soviet Holocaust. So we hope students who are learning a lot of history that is just incomplete will find out it wasn't only 6 million Jews exterminated in Germany. It was 60 million Russian men, women, and children exterminated in the Soviet Union, from Lenin to Brezhnev. And that is so huge, the few who survived it or remembered it are still scared or have died themselves. So recovering that kind of relatively recent human history, not for the horror story, but for the horror story it is telling the future of a country like ours, with a president who doesn't have the imagination to see what did happen. And he's not the only one. Franklin Roosevelt agreed at Yalta to this forcible repatriation that I mentioned earlier after World War II that my husband escaped from. But these archives are really, they're fun and they're colorful, and if you can read Russian, you can go anywhere you want to. And that's the idea. We can move it around, we can readjust them, and then come up with what nobody expected we would.